members for coming to the meeting. We have a quorum this time. Let's invite the administration and the deputations in. First of all, thank you for coming to the meeting, government representatives and deputations. I'm not going to introduce the government officials one by one because you've all got the attendance list. Now we have issued invitation for the public to come for the profession to come to give their views. We have issued a notice in our website, and we've also issued invitations to the 18 district councils. Now we have 16 deputations to come to give their views. 5 have made submissions, but they won't be attending the hearing. If you have submissions or documents, but you haven't passed them to us before the meeting, please leave them with our staff as you leave today. May I remind all the deputations today that there is microphone and also an earpiece, channel 1, channel 0 floor, channel 1 Cantonese, channel 2 English, and channel 3 Putonghua. And I must remind you that when you address the Bills Committee, you are not covered by the protection and immunity provided under the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance Cap 382. Your written submissions are also not covered by the ordinance. Please note the security measures set out in the note for members of the public attending meetings in conference rooms or observing meetings in public galleries in the Legislative Council complex. The note has been attached to the letter to you. Is also tabled, and if you wish, you could also ask the security staff for the reference note. Now I will invite deputation to speak. Each representative will have 3 minutes. When 3 minutes is up, I will have to ask you to stop. First one, Madam Tang Mui Fan. Thank you. I'm Tang Mui Fan. I'm from the sector. We are in the PCM business as well. Now for the amendment to Cap 549 rather, I see that the director, if he has reasonable grounds to believe that there could be danger, blah blah blah, then a recall can be made. Now, for under the current Cap 349, if it targets PCMs and CHMs found to be dangerous, hazardous to health, or unfit for human consumption, and if it's found to be the case, then there could be a recall immediately. Now the amendments also now gives the power to director to make recalls. But it is specific in the legislation in that if the PCM is dangerous, hazardous to health, unfit for human consumption, then the director has that power. But then what sort of danger and what is considered unfit for human consumption? then it's about a procedure for registering PCMs. It's about the safety, quality, and efficacy, and also labels and instructions. Now, since 1999, the Department of Health enacted legislation, and we have been going by that legislation in applying for registration. So, but if the department finds a product to be dangerous, there are no specific conditions as provisions to how the products could be recalled. It just says as far as practicable. That's all. So this amendment actually addresses some ambiguities in the current legislation. But would it be a loophole? No, if you read this carefully, you'll find that there are many aspects when it comes to the registration of PCMs in the past. But now, with this amendment, if if no one has the power to order recall, then certain people might think that, okay, because there is no recall mechanism, then we could exploit that loophole. And it may take a month or two or even longer before a product could be recalled. But if a product is dangerous to the public, then of course it's a matter of first priority to deal with it. Now, there are products that are not registered, then they cannot be recalled at once because they're not registered. They don't need to follow the PCM registration procedure. And if you find out, then well, yes, you can make a recall, but it may take several months before that happens. Now, but for us who comply with the laws, we work so hard. Thank you. Next, Mr. Yao Fok-wing. Thank you. On behalf of the Hong Kong Society of Chinese Medicines Limited, I would like to address the Bills Committee. Now, for this amendment bill, our society believes that the Department of Health must have powers to recall PCMs or CHMS that may pose threats to the public. And we believe there's an urgency for this amendment bill to plug a loophole. The Department of Health has adequately consulted the sector. As far as I can recall, the sector unanimously supported the exercise. So we hope the Legislative Council will support this amendment bill and have it passed as soon as possible. Our society also has some suggestions because the Chinese medicine ordinance has been in place for some 20 years, so it is a good opportunity, without affecting the passage of the current amendment bill, to conduct an overall review of registration of Chinese medicine. We have 4 points to make. 1, now for products with Chinese herbal medicine, they are regulated under 2 main categories. If a product fits the description of PCMs and is registered as PCMs, otherwise is just sold as food. We know for PCMs, of course, and its registration, there are stringent requirements. As for the current food legislation, it is not enacted for the purpose of regulating products containing CHMS. That's why our society proposes to add a new category that is between medicine and food, so we can regulate products containing Chinese medicine that's not for therapeutic purpose but for health enhancement purpose. On the regulation of such intermediate category of products, the focus should be on safety of the product and the reasonableness of the health claim. Second point, for products with misleading names, they should be regulated. We know that I mentioned an intermediate category, but it takes time to enact legislation to regulate them. Of course, but for now we could deal with products with misleading names. The third point is the term Chinese herbal medicine. There's Schedule 1, Schedule 2, 605 herbal items altogether, but it's outdated, so it has to be revised. And fourthly, in the long run, we should align our practices with that of the mainland. Thank you. Next, Mr. Mack. Thank you. I represent the Hong Kong and Kowloon Chinese Medicine Association Limited. For CAP 549, it was enacted in 1999. It's been some 20 years. And the sector encountered a lot of problems in the implementation of this piece of legislation. And now for manufacturers, wholesalers, retailers, they all encountered problems. Now the administration is going to amend the legislation. I hope the amendment will be more comprehensive. It shouldn't just to be about amending legislation in reaction to a particular incident, because then with comprehensive amendment, it would promote the development of the sector as a whole. Now there are 9 points. We hope that there will be amendments to the legislation on these points. First, the membership of the relevant committee, that is the Chinese Medicine Development Committee. We hope there will be more members from the sector. Otherwise, we're not consulted and then policies are made. Second point, there's need to amend the definition of CPM, proprietary Chinese medicine. Now, that incident happened because of the definition of proprietary Chinese medicines, PCM. So I hope the government will have detailed discussion with the sector so we could consider how we amend the definition of PCMs and also plug the loophole of the 7+1 problems in the market. Third point, there's a registration system for PCMs now, but not one for health tonic. Now, according to the relevant laws of the mainland, there is a registration system for different types of products, PCMs, health products, and so on. So that's the approach adopted in the mainland, and we hope the government will learn from the practice of the mainland, and there should be a registration system for health products. Otherwise, the confusion in the market now will just persist. Fifthly, now in the past we had the Chinese Medicine Development Committee, and now we have the Chinese Medicine Council. We hope there'll be more sector representation. Thank you. Well, you have a written submission, and the Bureau has got it too, so the Bureau could respond to your views then. Next, Mr. Lee Chan-kan. Thank you. For the Chinese Medicine Ordinance, it was enacted over 18 years ago, and it's actually not able to keep up with the times. At the time, it was a band-aid approach. And the legislation was far from comprehensive. Now we're talking about amendment to the Chinese medicine legislation. Well, it's about by banning unregistered PCMs being sold in the market, so there will be public assurance when they take Chinese medicine. So the Liberal Party supports that, but we have to give it more thought on the recall mechanism and the reference process. Could it lead to more gray areas? Now, say for the general public, we go to a convenience store to buy a herbal drink. Now it's considered a 7+1, so it may be regulated. And if something should happen to that herb, maybe for other brands of tea with the same herb, would it lead to the same problem? But then we're told that this is a herbal tea that helps to dissipate heat in the body. So it will lead to problems, and that's why we want clarification. First, the definition of PCMs, what is it? What about the definition of health products? The 7+1 drinks or products, what are the definitions? And then there are many other, there are many pills that are almost like pass-offs of the original brands. And if one pill has a problem, does it mean other similar pills also have the same problem? Could it cause public panic? So in terms of implementation, we're worried that just because there's a problem with one brand of the same product, all other products are affected. Now, in the past 2 decades in Hong Kong, we've always been talking about promoting the development of Chinese medicine, establishing Hong Kong as a Chinese medicine port of hub or whatever. But then that means the legislation must be specific. There must be no grey areas. Otherwise, it will just be a trap for the sector, and it will stifle the development of the sector. Thank you.
Ms. Chan Shaki, I just support the government proposing this amendment. However, it's not effectively to prevent the sale of unsafe proprietary Chinese medicine. But most importantly, within the sector, the first condition that we need to have a comprehensive definition whether it can make the TPM to expand at the international level. However, Hong Kong is the main training center for the Chinese medicine. However, in this ordinance, back 18 years ago, this is a rather outdated amendment. It's not able to enhance the development of this sector. Thus, the government would need to have a deeper reform, revise the ordinance so that they could enhance the development of the sector. However, when the current amendments, should the government consider the issue of like recycling legislation? There's a lot of concerns in this sector, and for the actual implementation of the recycling is yet to be determined, and it seems to be quite abstract. And while the sector has found difficult to follow, and they will follow in terms of to recycle, it's very difficult to have guidelines for the recycling or recall rather. Can the government offer some concrete measures so that there will be guidelines for the trade sector to follow, as well? Shouldn't the government should communicate or deeper communication with the sector? So we'd have to establish a reasonable time frame for recall, so that the wholesalers will have a reasonable time to recall the products. And how do we determine and call a reasonable scope for recall? And this kind of we need to have a clear timetable for that. So that the wholesalers will not have the operations affected. And practically, the penalty have been overly harsh, and hope the government could as suitable relaxation not as to stifle the development of the sector and its survival, so that the innocent petitions will not be affected instead of a cross-the-board cut and targeting the suppliers. The government should formulate a strategy, and as well as proper regulation and health to show the healthy growth of the industry. Mr. Feng Wen-to. The Democratic Party is supporting the proposed amendments, and however, in the long run, the government must reform the regulatory regime and its standards so that the Chinese medicine can enter the professional arena, and the standards must keep up with the times. And currently, the Hong Kong only regulate the pesticide residues, and according to the Schedule 1 of the pesticide residues in food regulations, and the maximum residue limit has set about at 7,083 items, covering 360 type of pesticide. As for Chinese medicine, it lacks kind of similar regulations. I suggest the government should take reference of the Chinese and European pharmacopoeia to consistently revise the Chinese Materia Medica and through the revision of the CMO and to legislation to regulate the pesticide residue levels of this Chinese medicine. And separately, Hong Kong has not yet set an upper limit for the sulfur dioxide levels, and in Chinese areas such as the Taiwan Health Ministry had established the sulfur dioxide level of Chinese medicine, and the mainland China Materia Medica has established levels for Chun Kong as 150 grams, and for Atractylide, Cotopsis, and white peony roots as about 400 milligrams per kilogram. Thus, the Hong Kong must catch up as soon as possible. And currently, the import of the Chinese medicine is under a lax regime. The import of medicine is currently follows the CAP subsidy legislation of CAP 60 of Import-Export Ordinance of the Schedule 2, of which there are 36 types of regulated Chinese medicine. However, there are actually thousands of Chinese medicine, and for the other Chinese medicine, there have been no law-binding regulation in terms of the source and quality. Even though the CMCHK, the Chinese Medicine Board, has established the PERQ guidelines for Chinese medicine wholesalers, which have a storage and inspection and so on. For example, for procurement, it stated that it should buy herbals from the reputable supply. It's just a guideline, is a law and binding. And how do we define reputable? There will be a room for contention. Since most of the Chinese herbal medicines come from the mainland, and the lack of the supervision tracing from the source, the quality is a doubt. And last year, the State Ministry have issued the planning outline for the development strategy for Chinese medicine, stated that they have to perfect the quality tracing system and to implement the management system. So how we need to collaborate with mainland to make sure that the Chinese herbal medicines are of satisfactory quality. Mr. Wang Kwok-chung. We support. It's a good thing that we can recall problematic Chinese medicine. I remember quite some years ago, and for these problems occur with Chinese medicine, we support the Chinese Medicine Board for the recall. The farmers of this herbs, in which they were confused with two types of herbs. And in terms of they do have insufficient time for preparation for this type of herbs. And the Chinese Medicine Board, when asked for recalls, and the trade totally supported the medicine sector, we would buy it in Zhuangzhou, and which experience in procurement. I hope that you can all know that these herbs are foreign products. I hope that you could pay more attention to that. Referring to Schedule 1, about the 36 types of Chinese medicine, just not used by Chinese herbal doctors. Because the boss have ordered the doctor not to prescribe them, because he'll be responsible for any problems. So the herbals in medicine in Schedule 1 is not usually prescribed. And so we're not able to have to provide prescription for a lot of patients. And since these are our foreign products, just like vegetables, they have they even use the pesticide. Their problem is largely free, largely okay. Some Chinese herbs are not allowed to use sulfur. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Lau Chomo, Chairman and Government Representatives, I was speaking on behalf of the Hong Kong Chi-Chong Hangzhong Herbal Factory Limited. As we only have 3 minutes, on the proposed amendments have been listed in our submission, and I'll just very quickly lay out the main suggestions. First, the government suggested implementing a China's medicine safety order, and for the 2 unregistered PCM, with the use of energy labeling, can we government exercise its regulatory powers? So we propose that to, at the same time amending this Chinese medicine, we have to also modify the definition of the proprietary Chinese medicine. And in the safety order, we have to lay down the grounds for banning the sale and the grounds for recall. And one of the grounds of the recall to change it into have the need have reason cause to believe the original text, as proposed that terms and where to make the order where feel is such need, and on the surface of notice and orders. This is about is it of the address, and we suggest that we cancel this clause because it involved a lot of human factors, and dropping it on the door, it could be destroyed or even lost. And then we are assuming the receipt of the notice. And fourthly, we're currently about an ordinary retailers, and I propose that adding of a retailer license system, because we have too many proprietary Chinese medicine, and the retailers, as a manufacturer ourselves, it's impossible to cover all of them, and we believe that at the current market, for those that's not purely made of Chinese medicine, and it claims about medicine having other supplements such as collagen and marketed as food and with food labels, the quantity have way exceeded the number of registered proprietary Chinese medicine, and these names are adopting the names usually known in Chinese, or even, and those in the trade description are using some wordings that's not allowed in the relevant legislation. Ms. Lai Yun Han.
I'm from the Natural Healthcare Hong Kong Limited. I strongly support the proposed amendments to the Chinese Medicine Ordinance. I came to invest in Hong Kong. It's been 5 years. In the process, I could see the advantage of investing in Hong Kong because everything is well regulated, and I am happy about that. I've been in the trade for 53 years. I've set up many micro factories all over the world. But when it comes to Chinese medicine, it seems that Hong Kong gives a high status to Chinese medicine. Now, why do people like Chinese medicine? Because it's produced in Hong Kong, and that says a lot about the quality and regulation of medicine here. Now, I've been here for 5 years. I can see the regulation is reasonable. At the same time, it seems that the regulatory authorities do not entirely understand Chinese medicine, and sometimes they may not be so professional, so there's unfairness. Sometimes if we did something wrong, they only told us after several years. For example, bacterial testing. We are asked to do it. Yeah, we have done it because we're very professional and we have hired experts. They all think it's it's not a problem. And so for the whole testing process, we've done it, but it's only after several years they told us it has to be the same laboratory, the testing laboratory, but it's not fair to us. We were only told several years later. We've lost a lot of time. So if the Hong Kong government wants to leverage on its current advantage, it must do better. It must be more professional. It must make reference to the tolerance other countries and the mainland are showing to Chinese medicine. Sometimes, in some cases, they just need to, put on record a product and then it is allowed. So that's why in Hong Kong we need to be more professional. And we must not, lose our advantage with the reputation we enjoy. Next, Mr. Lau Hiu-pen. Thank you. I've been in the trade for 2 decades. I have seen the ups and downs of the Chinese medicine sector. Now, before 2003, when we set up stores at the TDC for the exhibition, it really flourished. A lot of people came. But now, it's only part of the food pavilion. There's only a tiny store. You can go and see it. So I've seen the rise and fall of Chinese medicine development here in Hong Kong. And then I've also seen how the 7+1 have flourished. And that's because of the government's policy under the as manifested in the Chinese medicine ordinance. Now, this amendment is a result of the Long Kok Rakukhan San case. Now, I don't support that. It's not that I support the product, but it's a matter of law enforcement. There are problems because of the ambiguities in the definition. It didn't need to become such a major incident. But anyway, I hope the government will help the sector. It shouldn't just focus on regulation. It should also consider supporting the development of the sector. Now, on mainland, there's an official. He said, Now we are not the police, and the sector are not thieves, so we are in collaboration together. So as long as we work together, then we are able to realize our goals. So that's the relationship between the government and the sector. So for this sector to develop, the government must have vision. It must also offer support. If the government only cares about regulating without supporting the sector, then it will stifle the development of the sector. Now, Mr. Tong Chi-Wah proposed a Chinese medicine hub. It was 20 years ago, but how far have we gone? So perhaps this amendment is a good opportunity for us to improve upon the Chinese medicine legislation. Now, there's one thing that really affects the sector, because at the time, in the ordinance, they say that there must be a standard for permitted level, but then that actually stood in the way of development of the industry. And I think this is not real, this standard. It doesn't really represent a trade standard or the global standard. Now, it takes a long time to register a product, sometimes 3 years. For 1+7 products, it takes just 3 days to be registered. And please also consider for the PCMs with Hang formula, they should be allowed proper registration as well. And also there's plenty of room for development for Chinese medicine under the Belt and Road Initiative. Thank you. Next, Mr. Lee Min-chi. I represent the Hong Kong Chinese Medicine Manufacturers United Association. Now, I've heard my colleagues say a lot just now. So we know there are a lot of problems with the Chinese medicine ordinance. There should be a comprehensive review. But then today, the topic is really just about the proposed amendment. That is to expand the powers of public officers. And secondly, definition for PCMs or CHMS. If they consider there's a problem, then there could be recall. So we'd like to speak on those 2 aspects. And we have 2 points to make first. Now, with this expansion of powers, we see there's a loophole in the recall process. It seems that the powers of public officers are substantially expanded. But let's say for a company is only a shell company, is only got an address with accountancy firm, and we find a problem with the product, there's no way you could ask them to recall the product. And since the recall order cannot be issued, and that means there's a problem with recall, and then what would the Department of Health do? So people could exploit that legal loophole. Second point, for the definition of products, there is now a problem. After the amendment of the legislation, if the public officer believes that this is a PCM or it is a CHMS, then there's a problem. Then they could ask the referent parties to recall. But then there are health products or some products which could also be packaged as food, or some heat dissipating product and so on. They are considered health tonic or health products, and they are sold that way. So people, again, if there's a health product considered a pharmaceutical product by the department, and then this is recalled, and of course it will substantially undermine the development of health product industry. And also, the Chinese medicine ordinance has been in place for some 20 years now. There should be a comprehensive review, not just a minor tinkering, because it doesn't help the development of the industry. We have to give a definition of what is PCMs and whether health products need to be registered, and also for some in the trade they carry HKP products, and right now they cannot register under the current legislation, so they become 7+1 products. So could there be a dual track system for HKP and HPC to address the current problems? We hope there will be a comprehensive review of the Chinese medicine ordinance. Otherwise, there's a dim future waiting for us. Thank you. Next, Mr. Mok Min Kwan. Thank you for this particular issue. The guideline for recall of Chinese medicine products, and then for problematic products they could be recalled. This will help to protect public safety, but I don't know why the government doesn't take this opportunity to conduct a comprehensive review of the Chinese medicine ordinance. Now, the Director of Health doesn't have the power to order the recall of problematic products, but there are other problems too with the current ordinance. In June this year, the Ombudsman's office said that there will be they will start an investigation on the regulation of Chinese products, because there are so-called health products making certain claims, but and then these are found to be very similar to PCMs registered or vetted by the Chinese Medicine Board. But then these products, because they claim to be health products, they don't need to be registered at PCMs, and so they're able to circumvent the relevant legal requirements and the registration process. But then for most people, they can't tell the difference between PCMs and health products. They will just rely on the recommendation of retailers. So there could be a loophole in the current registration system, and some manufacturers could circumvent the regulatory system, and it poses a threat to public. So there is no regulation of health products, but then on the other hand, for manufacturers who follow strictly the registration procedure, there are too much regulation. It stifles the development of the trade, and some of the requirements are too stringent. And then, for example, for application for HKC, there is need to provide the full formula to the Chinese Medicine Board. But with technological advancement or the extinction of certain herbal medicines or the control of certain herbal medicines, the formula may have been revised. But if then the trade registers product again, they have to face another long and cumbersome process. But if do not re-register, then they may be caught by the trade description ordinance. So the trade is caught in a difficult position. So maybe there should be a mechanism for the revision of formula, so there's no need for a completely new registration. since the trade has already so many comments about the Chinese medicine ordinance, and already the Ombudsman has indicated she will start an investigation into the system, so the government should take this opportunity to improve upon the regulatory system. Thank you. Next. Now, I represent the committee to study the amendment of the Chinese medicine ordinance. Now, it's the 20th anniversary of the reunification of Hong Kong, and the trade has waited 20 years. We still do not have a comprehensive policy to guide the development of the Chinese medicine industry. But focus has always been on regulation. And there are no elements for promoting development. So this deficiency has dealt a severe blow to the industry, and it's something we must face up to. And also, by legislating, it's supposed to enhance the professional status of the Chinese medicine industries and also promote better understanding among the public about the use of Chinese medicine. But these effects have not been felt for Chinese medicine industry. There is not a policy that promotes both regulation and development. And also, the ordinance itself has structural deficiency. The assumptions are wrong, and it's not in line with the reality. Now, at National Day celebration dinner, we're glad that Matthew Cheung said that for this government, one of our priority tasks is to develop Chinese medicine. And also under the Food and Health Bureau, there will be a special unit set up to promote the development of Chinese medicine. Now, this has again rekindled our hope in the government. After reunification, the public in general have little understanding about Chinese medicine, or when the Chinese medicine ordinance bill was first drafted, but now people have come to know a lot more about Chinese medicine. But then there is a problem. The definition of PCMs, and also in the process of license renewal, there are plenty of loopholes. And also the ordinance makes reference to the Western medicine approach in assessing Chinese medicine, and this is unreasonable, and many people have come to realize that. And then when many policies or initiatives are introduced, there is no regard to the affordability or the capacity of the industry, and also there's no regard to the technological level of the industry. So we need to have a better understanding of the nature of Chinese medicine before we could have comprehensive review and improvement of the legislation. Thank you. Next, Mr. Yong. Madam Chair, Mr. Shiu, members. Now we are trade that we many of our dealers trade in Chinese medicine in Schedules 1 and 2. Many have 3 to 4 decades of experience. Now we're not against the amendment because this is for the protection of public health. So the Director of Health should be given the power to recall certain products that are hazardous to health or unfit for human consumption. So Chinese medicine safety order could be issued in such circumstances, and then the product could be recalled. We support that amendment. In Section 113 of Cap 549, the amendment to Schedule 1 says that after consulting the relevant committee or board, then changes can be made to the the relevant schedules 1 or 2. Now, we have put forward our proposals or our recommendations to the Department of Health for some Chinese medicine, herbal medicine in Schedule 2. They could be instead put in Schedule 3, so there will be more relaxed regulation. This will benefit consumers. But so far, we have not received any response. Now, the government proposes to amend the Chinese medicine ordinance. We believe the director should have a power to handle Schedule 3, so there is more relaxed regulation. For Schedules 1 and 2, there must first be transparency in making a notice. So then the director should be given power to expand the list under Schedule 3. And then there should be proper guidance. Thank you. Next, Mr. Wong Kampui.
香港有4大呢個比較藥材。
The four Chinese Medicine Association unanimously agree for this amendment. I hope that after the enactment of this amendment, hope that we can protect the Hong Kong brand and also reputation for Chinese medicine, as well as to protect the reputation of Hong Kong as a shopping paradise. However, in the details, I hope that the Department of Health can reconsider whether some details can be fine-tuned. And I also have a question. In terms of recall, so for problematic medicine are removed from the shelves that would be good for the public. However, for the importers or the wholesalers, is there any financial arrangements for these two stakeholders? Because in Hong Kong, we call consignment on credit. On credit on a material basis, and we get to the source. Is there sort of arrangements or protection? For this question, I hope that the Department of Health can give you some serious thought. And for other aspects that have been mentioned by the members of trade, and that's my submission, deputation. Mr. Poon Po Sem. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, the members and the government representatives. To step up enforcement and the regulation of illegal and drugs are pose a threat to the public health, and the chamber as a liaison between the government and the trade. This chamber would not object the proposed amendments, but it must be clarified some doubts with the provisions. And after carefully studying the documents provided by LegCo, and as well as looking for the original text, and all along the department has focused on the loophole created by the court case in each creating the proposed Chinese medicine safety order. Have all noticed that the Chinese medicine ordinance and the subsidiary legislation revision for the acts to differences created to Chinese medicine traders. For details, you can please check the Schedule 3 and paragraph 7, 8, 9, and 10. For example, and on the 7th Amendment, on the second, this is a problem which we hope to be clarified. Then on where the meanings of them just on the abolish and to replace it with words about as well as using. If the wordings are identical, can you explain why we need to change it? If they are different, so does that mean the regulation has been tightened? I hope that you can explain the reason for this amendment. And the section 9 on the second point, the 16 on the Q, it was proposed just and the words option then replaced with specified the product as that to be recalled where rapid and as far as practicable. In considering the above amendments, which I submit in this submission, and due to time constraints, I hope that you could all notice the question we raised in the submission. We have first the government representative to respond, and then I will open the floor to members. Mr. Chan. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the deputations. And first, thank you for providing your comments on the development of the Chinese medicine. And we heard a majority of the deputations have supported this, the passage of this amendment. In the course, we have also heard that those in the industry that have comments on the policy as well as the specific provisions. So I shall give you a brief reply. However, outside of the Bills Committee, including the panel on health services, I'll be happy to follow up on the comments on the policy. So let me explain. And the purpose of the amendment is rather simple. That's to confer powers to the Department of Health so that they could issue a Chinese medicine safety order for problematic Chinese medicine for the incorporated or cooperative trade members under which to recall the products. The Department of Health can forcefully order such a recall. And this amendment did not change the recalling mechanism that had been running well. And in 2005, the Chinese medicine officials had issued the guidelines on the recall, which had been in place since 2005, and the Department of Health had cooperated many times with the trade in conducting many of the recall exercises, and which had won a lot of full cooperation from the trade, so that the recall can be done in a rapid manner in order to prevent the problematic to circulate in the market. However, in the last document, because due to a judge verdict, we think that the ordinance have not conferred such explicit powers to authorize the director to issue the safety orders. Thus, this amendment had proposed, and we heard a lot of opinions in the sector. And then besides this amendment, in time these provisions, there are other places to deserve review and to be reconsidered, and that we heard this comments. And because this amendment, it's important because it had to do with the public health. So if they just the trade support, then we shall proceed. And for the other areas, we should not review. For example, there are frequent mentions from the deputations on the definition of PCMs. We noticed that a lot of the products containing PCM, if they do not fit into the definition of PCM in the ordinance, that they don't need to register. That we have took notice, and we're aware that more work would need to be done to protect the public health. And since May this year, and in the Chinese Medicine Board had a working group to have a comprehensive review on the definition of the PCM, and where the expert will provide the expert advice, because it had to do with a lot of technicality and would have a wide ramifications on the whole trade sector. And we hope to strike a balance, and it was consensus in between the trade and the expert advice before proposing amendments. And in July, they have convened a meeting and begin discussion on the various proposals. And the Department of Health and the government will continue to work with this working group on this matter. And once the working group can come up with concrete comments, the government would consult the industry in due course, as well as to update the relevant panels and committees. So this work is continuing, and I suggested this amendment, and because of other suggestion review or reviews to be halted, that's because this amendment has very much to do with protecting the public health, and a lot of views in this sector on the long-term development of the medicine. The government has set up a Chinese Medicine Development Committee, which comprises of those different stakeholders and experts in the Chinese medicine trades, where they could advise the government. The government would like to take in the views of different stakeholders to the committee in order to enforce a way and enhance the development of the sector. And I heard some deputations and their views on which have been discussed at the development committee. And if there is a further update, that we shall return to the legislative panels to make a report. In the current term, government, like the other deputations have mentioned, is have to set up a designated team in this bureau to facilitate the policy development of the Chinese medicine. And as I get handy information, I shall brief this panel. And some of the deputations had some opinions on the wording of the amendments. Maybe after the meeting, the government can provide some comments on the specific amendments. I hope that we can to enhance the language in the proposed amendments. That's my initial reply. The Department of Health, let's say, have anything to say on the Chinese medicine standards?
Dr. Chu, thank you. The sector has given some of the views on our amendments. If I may just say this amendment is to do with the recall of Chinese medicine. Now, how is it different than what we've been doing? Currently, we do have some recall measures, and that's under the licenses of for Chinese medicine wholesalers, manufacturers, and traders. So under this free licensing mechanism, we have a recall mechanism. But this time round, in this case, we found that if we are talking about recall of products not coming from these three groups, then the Director of Health doesn't have the statutory power now to require or order a recall. So that's why the proposed recall order is to target two sets of circumstances, because the trade did ask under what circumstances there could be a recall. Here, there are two levels. First, prohibition of sale. Second is just recall. So under what circumstances would there be prohibition of sale? Now, for Chinese herbal medicines or PCMs, if these are sold illegally, then we're worried that under the circumstance, the quality, safety, and so on could be doubtful. Second is PCMs or CHMs, they are hazardous health or unfit for human consumption. And the third set of circumstances is we need to impose a prohibition order, so reduce the possible risk to the public or to mitigate the risk already caused. So these are the reasons why we may impose a ban on sale. And this time round, the target could be any person or any operators. So for illegal sale or supply of PCMs or CHMs, if the Director of Health is given the power under the amendment, then recall could be ordered. So that means we could operate better, covering the full range. Just now, someone asked about Shell company. Well, exactly, because we don't just target Chinese medicine dealers or traders. If any company or any person supplies PCMs or CHMs which are problematic, then that's still covered by the Chinese Medicine Safety Order. So please understand it. For the Chinese Medicine Safety Order, it would have much better full coverage than is currently the case. Shell companies, what do you do with them? They're shell companies after all. For any company, in its name, it supplies medicine that's of inferior quality, and then we decide there's need to issue a Chinese Medicine Safety Order or recall order, then we'll require the company to tell us to which places it supplied the medicine. Now, of course, if the company is already disbanded, then we have to see if there's anyone in charge of the company, and then we could issue the order to the person in charge to do the recall. Now, I open the floor to members for questions. First, Mrs. Regina Ip. We have plenty of time, so 5 minutes each first. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll ask my questions one by one then. First, for the government. In the process of manufacture of Chinese medicine, maybe dangerous products arise. How many such cases are there? How serious is the problem? In other words, what are the figures? What problems have been caused? What do you do now without this amendment? Dr. Choi? In 2015 to 16, we had 11 recalls. Say there's adulteration, or there's a heavy metal or Western medicine, or the labeling was not clear. Now we go by the reference guidelines to effect the recall, say in these 11 cases, and we were happy with the recall process by all these operators. So it's up to the cooperation of the trade. It's an administrative order. It works now, right? So I'm not against that. So my question is there need really then to legislate for that? And how do you find out there are problems, products with problems? Do you do spot check or random check or what? How does it work? Now, on the need for legislation, because there's a judicial review case that is under the current legislation, the director is not given the power to issue a Chinese medicine safety order. Now, under the current legislation, licensed manufacturers must have in place a recall system. But if they do not comply and not put in place such a recall system, the director does not have the power to make it compulsory. That's why there's need to make this change. And also, the current system only regulates licensed manufacturers. But for people without licenses, and under the current legislation, again, these people are not regulated. So the purpose of the amendment is first to give power to the Director of Health to issue Chinese medicine safety order. And then even for unlicensed traders or manufacturers, if they sell Chinese medicine products with problems, and the director could still issue the order. As for the second part, I'll defer to Mr. Choi, Dr. Choi. Yes, there are 3 ways for us to find out if there is a problem with a particular product. First, we have a regular market surveillance system. So we do a random check regularly on products sold in the market. And in that case, it's possibly poisoning cases. That's another channel. Let's say someone takes some Chinese medicine and becomes ill, then maybe the person goes to the hospital authority for treatment, and then there is a notification system under the exchange, so we get to know about such poisoning cases. The third channel is our liaison with overseas regulatory bodies. Let's say some problems happen not in Hong Kong but in other places. Maybe there's a major case of adulteration or confused or mistaken medicine, and then if we learn about it, we'll also track such products in Hong Kong. So, of course, the government is trying to improve upon the regulatory system. I'm grateful to the sector for coming here to give their views. I think the government has heard the views of the sector. They think it should be more than about regulation, but rather they want the government to give stronger support to the development of Chinese medicine. Madam Lai said Hong Kong has a lot of advantages. We have good reputation. We're doing fine with regulation, but the government's not according enough importance to Chinese medicine. Now, so for the Food and Health Bureau and the Department of Health, how much manpower resources do you have to help the industry develop other than regulating it? Do you have a dedicated team or a dedicated official to help the development of the trade? Well, in the Department of Health, we have dedicated Chinese medicine section. But then in the Bureau, we don't have any dedicated team to deal with Chinese medicine. In the Chief Executive's manifesto, she's pledged to set up a dedicated Chinese medicine section under the Bureau, so we're doing that. Exactly. Dr. Choi, please continue. Now, in the Department of Health, we have Chinese medicine team, 200 of us. But then mostly we help the Chinese Medical Council to deal with registration of Chinese doctors and monitoring medicine and so on. And if there are incidents, then we carry out investigation. There's a team doing that. And we have another team in charge of standards of Chinese medicine. That is the Chinese Materia Medica project. And then we also we have another team dealing with TCM practitioners without license. Mr. Xiu Ka-fai, thank you. I would like to thank all from the sector here. I heard that most of you are in support of the amendments. So we see that the sector attaches great importance to public safety as well. Now, I see most of you support the amendments, but then you may have some questions as well. Just now, deputation mentioned the possibility of a shell company. So how do you find those people when there's a need for recall? In the recall process, here we talk about the importer, the distributor, and then the retailer. What if we're talking about the distributor, for instance, is certain company, it buys certain products from importer, and then it distributes the products, but then the product's found to be a problem, and then you want to recall. But what about the distributor in the middle? And the distributor may have already left, the company may have folded. So the distributor has already sold to the retailer, but of course the importer wouldn't know which retailers have bought the product, and then the importer won't be able to record the products. Then would the importer be held liable? Dr. Chui, free recall case, it may be unique. The sales network, how many levels down before the product gets to the retailer. That's why when we draft legislation, it's impossible to include all scenarios. Now we have a recall guideline for Chinese medicine, so we spell out all the steps to take. So with regard to each unique case of recall, and then we talk to those involved and discuss in detail how we should record the product, and also we have to consider the harm, the degree of harm of that product, and so on, how long it takes to recall. Now, if we know about the whole supply network, of course, we are able to recall, but then maybe the chain could be broken. Let's say we know the products may have reached retail point, but then the retailers don't return the products. As I mentioned, under the Chinese medicine safety order, there is the power to ban the sale of the product. Let's say if we get to the retail level and retailers refuse to return the products to the suppliers, then under the Chinese medicine safety order, we could invoke our powers to impose a ban on the sale of the product. That's in the amendment. It will help to improve our process. So let's say for a product is found to have problems. I don't know if you're going to advertise on TV or it's just reported in news, because for frontline retailers, the distributor is gone, but the retailers are not informed, therefore, that the product they're selling has a problem. But then, let's say you reach the frontline retailers, you tell them about it, but then the distributor has gone. The distributor has never told the retailers that the retailers are still selling the product, but then when you get to their shop and you stop them. But as soon as you stop them, they actually stop selling, right? But maybe here we're talking about 2 months after the order has been issued, because the retailers have never been told until you get to them. Or could it be another way around? The importer has a missing link as the distributor. So maybe the importer has 6 distributors. The importer is able to reach 5, but not the other one, because the other one has left. And then the importer won't be able to reach the retailers of the 6th distributor. Then would the importer be in trouble? Now for the whole recall strategy, it must be because an incident has happened. That's why I believe the threat has been posed to public safety. If we want when we ask the operator to recall products, we will also do something to inform the public, like issuing a press release. It's hoped that the press release will reach all retail points or all parties who have sold on the product, and so they may know about this case, and then they will stop selling the product, hopefully. And then we will also look at the whole entire sales network for the particular product. The Department of Health will actually talk to the party in the industry on how long it may take to receive reply about the recall, and if we still get a reply, then we would use other means. For example, we will check whether the product is still being sold in the market. Another question is about liability. Now there is an disclaimer, or let's say the importer has supplied the or someone supplied a product to the retailers, but retailers won't reply, well then, as long as due diligence has been exercised, and then it's fine. So that won't be considered liability. Now, very often the product cannot be recalled 100% because they may have been consumed, or they may have been sold outside of Hong Kong, or for some reasons they may have been damaged and not sold or whatever. So we don't require that recall must be up to a certain percentage.
I understand the Department of Health, once its members pass, they will not right away issued the safety order. They will use the existing mechanism where it would liaise with the manufacturers, wholesalers, and so on, in requesting them to make a recall, and they will establish the recall system in line with the guidelines. And just in case that the relevant stakeholders are being uncooperative and willing to conduct a recall, then the department, the Director of Health, then will act according to the ordinance in issuing the safety order. So before the safety order has received, it not violate the order, how the Department of Health have see the need that the other parties would need to be a service with the safety order of like frontline retailers and are willing to oblige or refuse to take it off the shelf. This order will then be issued, and those in receipt of the issuance condition, there will be a breach. So we believe that the failed communication, the Director of Health would then issue a safety order, and only on your received order and not willing to comply, that would be in breach. Mr. Chen Hengbang. And on this recall order, I heard those in the meeting have raised no objections that to protect the public health, and there's not been disagreement. However, I noticed that those present mentioned issues that are concerned to this sector. The Secretary have mentioned that I hope to protect the public health, and the sectors have faced the problems among the recall of the PCM, also a lot of 7+1 products for a PCM, as have been mixed with a non-PCM. They would not be regulated, and you're not able to recall them. If it is a regulated product, but only you can use a safety order to recall them. So what would happen is that a lot of the products we mix with other products so that it would not be sold as a PCM. And how do you protect the public? Maybe there's some slight issue with the labeling for the PCMs. For the recall is quite simple. So for those products with 7+1, we're quite concerned with that. So maybe it would be on the service of protecting the public. However, we're creating a bigger loophole which the government have failed to detect, and nor propose any measures to close this loophole. And heard the Assistant Secretary claim that there's a working group working on that. Do you have a timetable or roadmap, or do you have a plan to when to address the issues of health food and mixed with PCMs? I just mentioned that on the definition of PCMs, for example, for those with products with traditional Chinese medicine, currently they're not covered in the current legislation, and this definition is currently under consideration by this working group created under the CMB. As for the actual progress, I can have Mr. Choi to answer that. And the definition of the PCM, we understand the trade concerns. Thus, we have convened the first working group meeting, and those are present are members of the working group. And at the first meeting, we want to receive comments from the trade, and we're currently coming up with some proposals. Maybe in 2 or 3 weeks, we have a second meeting, and the working group members will take a look at the feasibility of the proposals. If we're able to agree on this review as feasible, the next step will be discussed at the Chinese Medicine Board under the CMCHK, and once agreed that we will consult the trade. And for those in the trade, I mentioned that those Schedule 1 and 2 amendments, we actually would have a working group to review whether the Schedule 1 and 2, whether amendments were necessary, were any. As for the definition of PCM at the Schedule 1 and 2, so there's work going forward on the amendment. So, like Mr. Choi has said, and the Secretary mentioned that the Bureau is doing something. I hope that the entire Chinese medicine ordinance would have a more comprehensive review, and maybe here at the definition on the, as well as the Schedule 1 and 2. Would they consider a review, a complete review of the ordinance in addressing the industry concern? We find some HKC, HKP, HKNT. I'd hope that they have a different, more registration system, for example, HKS. So would the Bureau had any such plans to do so, to give more assurances to the trade, as to give them a way forward? Does the Bureau have any indications on that? As for the trade's concern on the regulation of the Chinese medicine, as well as the development of the whole sector, we have received similar opinions before, and these sort of views will then be submitted to the Chinese Medicine Development Committee for discussion. And this review is to review and through a different policy communications where they will be submitted to the Development Committee. This work is ongoing. So we have decided the priority for the different aspirations allowed by the trade, because there seems to be a lot on their plate. So we need to communicate with the trade which issues should be dealt with in order to set up a priority, which would be the easier to tackle. We ask for a comprehensive recall, but without specifying on the scope. Would that mean each issue would be able to achieve consensus within the trade? That's important, because if not able to forge a consensus for any proposed amendments by the government, it might not able to secure the general support from the sector. At the last term at LegCo, we had a working group in coming up with a lot of consensus. If the government hope to review equality, no matter abstract, actually there should be a scope to be considered. Maybe we can go back to revert back to documents. I think it's being laid out very clearly. I hope that the government, while discussing in the working group, and maybe some of the trade members will also have a more engagement, and maybe during the drafting or coming up with the policy of the directions, with however we're not clear about the operations of these working groups. I hope the Bureau or maybe the department would have more occasions to listen to the sector, and even carry them, and also wish to develop the Chinese medicine. And in October 11th, I hope forward there will be more new measures in the policy address, and I hope that the trade will be active to contribute their opinions. Mr. K.K. Kwok. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the representatives present. I agree that this amendment should be enacted as soon as possible, where safety is important. If the Chinese medicine is able to achieve new development, I think the ordinance will be beneficial. The more protection we can offer to consumers or patients, there will be more incentives to accept Chinese medicine or consume or receive Chinese medicine treatment. This could be one of the reasons why the government proposed this amendment. I heard some deputations beside the Chinese medicine. One of the biggest loophole would be the health products where there are a lot of frequent misleading situations. The Chinese medicine ordinance have been revised for a long time. In terms of the healthcare products, a amendment is overdue. We first discussed it back in 2004. I just wonder if Mr. Chen have familiar with the background. The intention was for the implementation of the CMO, we need to review the health claims made by these health products. If we take a look at the press report, we see a lot of unconscionable advertisement which affect the Chinese industry trade. There's a lot of fakes. They're neither medicine or neither therapeutic, but they claim so. I would like to ask the government, besides try to expedite the passage of the amendment in offering way better protection for the public for the products who claim to have Chinese medicine ingredients or pretending to be therapeutic products, when the government will act upon them so that this industry itself will be protected. Mr. Chen. And for those products making medical claims, the unconscionable medical ordinance could be applied, and the Department of Health has been prosecuting against such cases. As for the products containing Chinese medicine and yet not being covered by the current CMO, we took note of the problem as well. So we're inviting experts from the field to discussion to the amendment, how it should be done. And like Dr. Choi mentioned, and under the Chinese Ministry Council, there's a working group which already began working. If we're able to come up with some proposals, we have a extensive consultation to secure the support before we conduct the amendment. For that working group, besides from the trade sector, are there any consumer representatives, for example, the Consumer Council, or those who cares about the patient's interests? And on the membership, I will defer to Mr. Choi. The working group on the definition of PCM, the current membership include 3 types. Except from the Chinese herbal medicine, for example, professors, and those of the traders, as well as government laboratory representatives. And currently, this working group has not included any members from outside the industry or the consumer representatives. But first, we have to to have a proposal that is agreed upon by the members, which would be vetted against by the Chinese Medicine Council, where there are lay members, and upon agreed by the CMB, we should have a trade consultations where also the stakeholders will be consulted. Chairman, this question had not been answered. From reading for the Consumer Council report, as well as some of the patients' organizations have concerning about the misleading description in products, and we understand this is an expert working group. If you're able to give clear admit members from the patient organizations and so forth, I believe that the amendment process will be much smoother. Then we can give it some thought. So as soon as we come with proposals, we have a wise, extensive consultation. Mr. Chen mentioned that the working group of definition had begun working in July. So a lot of work has been carried out. The most concern is like the Mr. Yip question that the Department of Health had a designated team, but there's no one at the bureau, and this is currently in planning. And for all this work, do you have some sort of a goal? I believe that could not done anything substantial within 1 to 2 months. But do you have a goal, or when would you have a dedicated team on Chinese medicine at the bureau level? And for the other reviews or the definitions, do you have any performance target? And for setting a dedicated Chinese medicine in the bureau, I hope that it could be as quick as possible. However, it very much have to follow the resource deployment mechanism. And once we can get the funding where, and then we would need to be approved by the LegCo and the FC. I hope that we can report to the relevant panels and committees within this year. Do you have a goal for the other war matters? Maybe we don't have a concrete goal per se, because those at the meeting have said that there are a wise disparate demands laid out by the sector, and on the definition of the Chinese medicine, this seems to be most of those can agree on. I believe that once the other aspect could come to some sort of agreement, we could discuss in the MCHK, and before we come to a consensus, it's very hard to offer a timetable. You claim you have meetings start convening in July. That's the working group of the definition. And Dr. Choi had described the process. First, the expert group will need to forge a consensus, and the Chinese Medicine Board will need to first agree to the proposal, and then they will have the trade consultation to take place. Thus, the timetable very much depends on the views we collected, and hopefully within this legislative year we can consult the trade for any proposals. As we heard, there are a lot of representatives and our members generally think that this amendment is necessary to tighten the regulation. However, we think that the government, we all agree the government needs to review on the government's stance on the development of the Chinese trade. And we see a submission from Ms. Helena Wong. At the last time, they requested the government to provide more information on the testing methods. However, they're not happy with the government's reply, and thus we come with some follow-up questions. And hope that you can prepare your response at the next meeting. I understand that we have discussed, touched on a lot of issues, and a lot of questions from members are probably not real much relevant to this proposed amendment. I hope the government can understand that while we're all taking this opportunity to discuss matters outside this amendment, because we care about the industry development and it seems to like the opportunity of directly talking to you, those who want to seize this opportunity. It hopes the government could take the industry's opinion seriously and create more opportunities for communication, maybe through symposium or informal meetings and so on, so for the industry to voice their concerns instead of using this opportunity, because we seem to agree with the amendment. Maybe the individual deputations have offered specific wording changes. However, they're all concerned the aspect outside of this amendment, which the government should take seriously.
Mr. Xiu Ka-fai. Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, on a different issue. Now, this is a recall process for Chinese medicine. What about the 7+1 health products? Or even just, herbal tea drink like Prunella drink, the bottled drinks that are sold at the 7-Eleven convenience stores. So do you deal with all of them the same way or differently? There are 3 different categories here. Now, we go by the current definition of PCMs under the current legislation. And this, so when we issue Chinese medicine safety order, we are not changing the definition. So we will follow the current yardstick even after the amendment. But of course, we've heard the trade say that for the definition of Chinese herbal medicines and proprietary Chinese medicine, for definition of PCM in particular is rather narrowly drawn. So that's why we're looking to that. And if in future we wish to amend the definition, say to include the 7+1, then of course this legislation will also apply to those products. So for the 7+1 or bottled drinks, they are not caught now, right? Or put simply, is that the case? Dr. Choi? If we use the term 7+1, already there's no consensus what that means exactly. It's just that the trade believes that there are some products that look like medicine, but they are they are now sold as health products now. Now, for any products for oral consumption, the government will see whether these products are regulated by current legislation. So from some of these products, they may fall under the scope of the Chinese medicine ordinance or other ordinance. So it doesn't mean that if a product is so-called 7+1, then it's not covered by any law. So that's the point I'd like to make. If there's a product now caught by the definition under the Chinese medicine ordinance, then with this amendment we're proposing safety order recorder, then of course such products will be caught. But if a product is not regulated under CAP 549 but it's a pharmaceutical product, then it's still regulated under another piece of legislation. So is there a recall or not? In the health products, 7+1. Perhaps I can explain to the public what 7+1 is, since this meeting is webcast. So if it's traditional Chinese medicine, of course, there's regulation. Just now we heard it may take several years to apply for registration. Then there are products that are similar to traditional Chinese medicine, but they may be some Western medicine in it or vitamin, just one drop of vitamin, and the composition of the product changes, so therefore it's not considered a Chinese medicine product. 7+1 could mean anything, really, and we don't know what the ingredients are in such a product. Now, I must stress that it doesn't mean that these products are not good, but just that they are a different category than the Chinese medicine. So we heard clearly for Chinese medicine products or PCMs, they will be recalled. But what about these products? Are they caught or not? Because it seems that what Mr. Chen said is slightly different than what Dr. Choi just told us. Now, if it's under CAP 549, is within the definition of the Chinese medicine ordinance, and of course it's regulated by CAP 549. But then maybe there's a product with a nutrient label, it's the so-called 7+1, and then but if it's still considered Chinese medicine, then of course it's covered by the recall order. But if it's not considered the Chinese medicine, I understand the trade's concern is in future, after we amend the legislation, would that product then become a PCM? Well, the definition of PCM is actually under study by a relevant working group. Well, so the short answer is no, such products won't be covered. This so-called health products, let's not talk about the brands. Already there are a lot of arguments over brands, but just say for these health products, there's just a tiny shift. So the registration can be done in 3 days. For the traditional products, it takes 8 years, 3 years or even 8 years. For the very well-known old brands, it takes forever to register. For these new products, we don't know what they are, but they can be sold. So for PCMs, we need to define them properly, but even for health products, you have to consider giving them a definition. And then we know exactly what we're talking about. So you have to do that quickly. Now, I'm stressed again, for many of the health products, they're probably good products. But we need to tell the public clearly that this is medicine, the other is not. But just by the name, people can't tell. And then the packaging is so similar. So how are we going to help the public understand that? And this is a good example. Now you are going to regulate with this law, but you end up regulating those who follow the law, who take 3 years for registration. For those not doing registration, they are again not affected. So I still have time, right? Is someone behind me? Yes, Mr. Ben Chen. Thank you, Madam Chair. About shell companies, Dr. Chui said that they might approach the shareholders and so on. When we talk about a limited company, but if the company just winds down, how do we hold the shareholders accountable? Has the department considered that? That's the first point. Secondly, there's submission from the Chinese medicine practitioners. There are many incidents. What is the assessment mechanism of the Department of Health? How do we prevent abuse or improper use? So does the government have a mechanism in place? So you won't just likely issue a recall order, because it will undermine the public confidence in Chinese medicine. It also affects the sector. So how do you help people to have more confidence in the recall mechanism? Now, to prevent the director from abusing his powers to issue Chinese medicine safety orders, under the legislation there is an appeal mechanism. If someone feels aggrieved by the order, then they could always appeal under the legislation. For shell companies, whether the directors are held liable, perhaps I defer to Dr. Chui. Dr. Chui, if in our investigation we find that an individual is liable for the supply of the problematic products, then we could issue the safety order to that person. But of course, if the person does not then carry out a recall after receiving order, it's a breach of the order. As I said, we will also use other channels to make sure these products are not supplied to the public. For example, we may issue press release or to the public or to the trade, so they will immediately stop the sale and supply of the product in question. Mr. Xiu Ka-fai, third round. Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, for conventional trade that follow your guidelines, you have really stringent regulation over them, and business is tough. It's getting even tougher. You can tell. You can ask them. But then others may have similar products. They don't have. They're not under so much regulation, and we're not talking about something new, of course. We've talked about it on many occasions in our meetings with you. So you need to come up with some ways as soon as possible to regulate other products, or to put right the definition. Because many in the traditional Chinese medicine are really losing hope. They are always targeted, and but then others who do the same, their costs are much lower. And it's not good. It's not what the public wants to see. Now, for such a recall, so you've done them for some time. Were there cases that you recall certain products thinking there's a problem at the end and no problems found? Has it happened? Now, first on regulation. Yes, we are not amending the definition this time. But there's room for improvement to the legislation for unregistered Chinese medicine products. If they meet the definition under the law, we could still order a recall. So if some products have not been registered with the medical with the Department of Health, but we find a problem with the product, then the director may still issue a Chinese medicine safety order to the trader. So that's why this order represents an improvement in the protection of public safety and health. Well, then it seems to be different from what my previous understanding. Let me find out more. Let's say there's a prunella drink. If there's a problem with it, would you recall it under this piece of legislation? Well, as Dr. Choi explained, if that product falls within the definition of a PCM in the law, then if there's a problem, a recall order could be issued. So it depends on the products. It depends on the ingredients of the product and whether the product is within the definition under the law. Now, I don't follow, Madam Chair. So yes or no? Yes or no? Mr. Chen or Dr. Choi, could you explain further? Let's talk about the existing mechanism. Before the amendment, only registered products are subject to a recall order. So the guideline for licensing says that there must be a comprehensive recall system, and so it's only at the time of granting a license that the regulation is imposed. So that's why only registered traders are caught. Under the existing legislation, the unregistered Chinese medicine products are not covered. And if we find a problem with such product, under the current law, the director has no powers to require the recall of such products. So that's why we are amending the law to say that the director has the power to order recall for such products as well. In other words, then all products are subject to the recall order. It's not what you said in the second round. Is that right? No, let me ask Dr. Choi to explain further. Now, I'm saying that there's a different definition for every object, for every person. Now, the prunella is representation. You may consider it to be one way, but others may be consider it another way. Let's say there's a drink. It says it's a label to say that it's to be drunk 3 times a day at this quantity, and it's for curing cancer. If that's the case, and this product falls within the definition of PCMs under CAP 549, therefore this product is subject to the regulation under CAP 549. But if it's not the CAP 549 definition, and as Mr. Chan explained, if it's not under the CAP 549 definition, then we cannot say the product is a PCM. Therefore, the safety order for PCMs won't cover that particular item. But then if it's possible that in future that product may eventually fall within the definition of the PCM, well, then we have to wait till the working group on the definition of PCMs to do the work. And then if such a product then becomes a PCM, then they will be covered by the recorder. Well, the two of you are saying something entirely different. If it's purely Chinese medicine, of course we know it's 549. Sorry, I'll be very quick. If it's purely 549, there's no controversy, no dispute. But let's say if someone adds a drop of vitamin in the Chinese herbal medicine, then it's no longer purely Chinese medicine. That's why it's the 7+1 health products. For pure Chinese medicine and the definition of CAP 549, he's saying that if you add something to it, then it's no longer a 549 product, right? Now, under the definition of of a PCM, that it must be purely Chinese medicine, and it must be a concoction, and then also is a customary. There must be a certain claim in the label. So if it does not fit the 3 criteria, then it's not a PCM. It's not covered by the recall order. That's why the two are saying something different. No, let's say you're talking about Prunella. It's not the same as adulteration of non-Chinese medicine. Can you give us something in writing? Yes, we will. As I said at the beginning, for this proposed amendment, it does not change the definition, the existing definition of proprietary Chinese medicine, Chinese herbal medicine. I've already said that from the outset. Thank you.
明白嘅。That I understand. Because the most pressing issue of the industry has not been addressed. That only came before due to a court case. Otherwise, despite the many years of pleading from the industry, nothing would be done. So this is actually more effective. And out of the trade concerns, I think during the line-by-line vetting, I hope the departments can respond to the questions. For example, there's a Chamber of Commerce or Trade Association. There's some questions because we haven't gone to the scrutinizing stage yet. However, some of the question raised by the Trade Association, I hope that the government can prepare to answer them. Because today we probably won't go there. The question raised by Mr. Andrew Xu. This I've been chasing the government for many years. That on the issue of definition, we don't deal with this. Practically, on this amendment, probably won't have much use, because currently at the market, you are regulating the good kids or those naughty ones or those who ignore the ordinance, that you have no control over them. So maybe people who spend a lot of money trying to follow to your regulatory regime, but at the end, that the ordinance not only not able to help them, and actually be very unfair to them, because their branding and their products are under-regulated, and some other products are not regulated and could only sell or add whatever ingredients in any way they like. I feel this is a deep injustice. So scrutinizing this amendment is something we'd like to do. However, this kind of Band-Aid amendment is rather not as substantial. I hope that the government could step up the pace into doing something we all wanted. And for the comprehensive review of the CMO, and I heard the trade had expressed the urgency for the comprehensive review, so we feel that it should go on a speed. As we have reached time, it's about time how to remind Mr. Chan, Mr. Xu's question, can you provide a clear written response as it on matters very much to do with the amendment? And there are a few representatives' submission has some comment on the specific wording, and hope that you can provide a written response to this as well. The last 1 minute. 1 minute. So let's say purely Chinese medicine. So for those products with mixed up with other products, let's follow with that. So you can notice the inconsistency. I hope that you can clarify that so that the trade could get on top of them. And in terms of financial arrangements, so during the, of course, the recall, which is there any assistance you can render? Because they would need to settle with on a credit system. The Trade Association, also the specific wording, I hope they can offer them a direct written response. And the quality standards. I think the main focus we don't know what sort of how this classification of the product. So we talk about the law-abiding sectors. For example, if I add unlimited lemon juice, I can when I classify a Chinese product and it could not be regulated. So that's hope the government provide a written response. So the next meeting will be on October 13th and at 10:45. And hopefully the ministry can provide a written response to our questions as well as to the members' question. That's yep. And thank you all the representatives speaking today. Chairman, so we can speak. So what happened will be in October. So you can, it's about the Chinese medicine. Maybe we could at the policy committee. If you have any comments to supplement, you can submit it in writing. Sure. So we can also discuss it at the relevant panels, because this is a bills committee whose job is to scrutinize the specific provisions in the amendments, or for other aspects, the definition as well as the review or the future development. It's just simply fall outside of scope. So since we shall resume, let's go resume in October, and then we could have an agenda item in specific policy committee, and where you can have given opportunity to speak at length on this aspect. However, this time we're mainly talking about the bills amendment. Okay, thank you all. The meeting is now adjourned.